again. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Here with another music discussion video for you. This time we are talking about Linkin Park. One of my, if not my first favorite band. My mom claims that when I was a baby, that my favorite band was Smashing Pumpkins. Obviously, I didn't have much of a conscience at that time to know that my favorite band was Smashing Pumpkins, but I do very clearly remember the impact that Linkin Park had on me at a very young age, and just being completely obsessed with their music as soon as they came out. So yeah, that clears up a lot of that right there. So they've been around with me pretty much since they started in '99. I mean, as soon as I remember seeing music videos on MTV, I think Crawling was the first video that I remember, like, walking around the couch as a toddler and seeing my parents and their friends and, like, my cousin transfixed on that video. And, like, I'll just never forget seeing it and thinking how interesting the vibe that it had with it was, you know. And I didn't really know what a music video was up until that point, so it was, you know, a cool first music video experience to have. And yeah, I gotta say, they were, like, I was just hooked as soon as my cousin showed me their first album, Hybrid Theory, and the one after it, Reanimation, the remix album. Yeah, I'll never forget that stuff. He was obsessed with them, and that was his favorite band at the time too. And yeah, it was, you know, just Linkin Park all around the house. You know, everywhere I went, you know, always had some Linkin Park CDs on me and had them in the headphones. Yeah, and then when Meteora came out, was equally obsessed with it, never stopped listening to it. Yeah, that one I probably burned into the ground back when I was, like, between 7 to at least, like, 12, 13 years old. Let me think. And then Minutes to Midnight came out, you know, and I do remember that. I remember the whole Transformers era and them, and that's kind of when I dropped off, because I started getting more interested into other kinds of music, because I had pretty much grown up with alternative rock and nu metal, like, most of my early childhood. And yeah, I mean, while that music is still very much a huge staple of my life, and I love that stuff very much, I was just getting more interested in the history of music and going way back further than stuff like Linkin Park and, you know, even Nirvana and stuff. So yeah, I was just getting into different music and kind of dropped off with 1,000 Suns and Living Things, and came back in. I mean, I was aware of those albums and aware of songs on them. I will say that I didn't completely live under the Linkin Park rock, so to speak, I guess. But yeah, I just didn't think much of them, and it wasn't my style at the time where they were going. I guess I preferred more the Minutes to Midnight approach. And yeah, then The Hunting Party came out, completely blew my mind. We'll get into all that. And then yeah, obviously when Chester died, it was huge impact, along with, you know, like, pretty much everyone that passed away around that year was, like, people that were, like, huge to me, and he was definitely a big one. And yeah, just the whole thing surrounding that's fucked up. Try not to get too much into all that in this discussion here, because I want to show nothing but love for them and what they did. And, you know, I hope that they continue. I mean, they're putting out a new single, Lost. It's like some old stuff, I think, from, like, Meteora. That'd be cool to see or hear. You know, I hope they keep it up. I know they said they didn't have plans to be completely done with it, but, you know, I understand the premise, the predicament, the situation going on there. So, you know, well, I understand as much as I can as a fan. You know, like, I could only imagine what it's like to try and repair what's left of Linkin Park without Chester in the mix. But I will say that I will listen to any of it and give all of it a chance, because I think the band is more than Chester. You know, it's everyone else involved, and that they deserve to carry it on if that's what Chester would have wanted them to do, you know. Or if, you know, somebody else has more power or say in that situation, you know, obviously take free reign, because I like the sound, and I would be interested to hear where they would go with it. Anyway, we'll get into the ranking here, clearing up my history with them. You know, it's just another episode of Brandon becomes unprejudiced towards a band that he dismissed during his metal days. So yeah, they were a band that with the Hunting Party, it just drew me right back in, and I've regained my fandom of them ever since, and yeah, love all these albums. A lot of them are interchangeable, like the Strokes and the Nirvana thing. There's just one more to rank here in this one, and yeah, the bottom one does kind of stand out among the rest, but really, I love all these albums. They're all a pleasant and awesome, mostly nostalgic listening experience all the way through. This week, listening to Linkin Park was very fun for me. So, at the bottom, though, at 3.5 out of 5 stars to kick it off. By the way, let me clear this up. Anything above 2 stars is going to be something that I want to listen to and can return to and see some value in, at least. If it's above 2, I'll say that. If it's below 2, that just means I have no interest in it, or I think it's bad, just like done bad. Anyway, we'll get into more stuff like that maybe later. So yeah, at 3.5 stars, One More Light at number 7. So, I'm gonna read through my notes here and give you the brief that I wrote for myself, but try to explain a little bit more on top of that. It's basically how these are going to be done. If you didn't notice, I sit here with my little notepad. So, One More Light. Definitely not bad. It's just their most pop-oriented album. Still has the bare bones of the Linkin Park sound. The only thing that is very apparently missing is any of the heavy guitar tones or sounds at all. It actually doesn't take anything away from the listening experience, though. In fact, it allows them to experiment with a broader array of more modern pop elements that give the album a character of its own. If a heavy song popped up on here, it wouldn't be like the worst thing to happen, but it would certainly be a hard left turn that would diverge the flow of the album. It's definitely their saddest and most melancholic album, whether that has to do with Chester's passing and whatnot, and just kind of the themes that seem so obvious and in your face on here. It's probably why, but it's also just the vibe of the instruments and the songs themselves. Though it does have similar motivational and uplifting themes to the previous releases, it does carry that melancholy throughout pretty much every song. The couple features on here are alright, but they don't really add enough to stand out within the Linkin Park sound. I do really like the Pusha T and Stormzy verses on Good Goodbye. That song was pretty cool, and I think their verses were pretty fire on that. But other than that, everything else on here as far as the features it was alright. It was alright. The most experimental Chester has gotten on any Linkin Park released vocally is on here. He's taken so many different vocal approaches on like a pro, and still creating very catchy and memorable and beautiful songs as well. There's a lot of beauty in the writing on this album. Mike has some lead songs, but definitely not as many as any of the previous albums, which is fine considering Chester passed away, and we might still get more new Linkin Park material. So, let Chester get everything out that he had left, I suppose. All of the instruments on here are definitely dialed back a bunch, except for the synths. Really, the synths on here are a big standout. There's very little guitar solos, like they were starting to bring in the mix on here, but I read a bunch of stuff that said that there's no guitar solos on here, that the lead work is boring. It's definitely not boring. There's plenty of interesting moments, and there is at least 2 or 3 actual solos on here, whereas other albums don't have any. So, yeah. All the parts seem to complement every song pretty tastefully, though, as far as everything being interwoven together, and it's all mixed very well, produced very well. Really no complaints in that. The only reason it's a 3.5 and at the bottom is because it really didn't do as much for me personally, and yeah, I just don't think it's their strongest hat to wear, when they can pick all kinds of hats. I do commend it for it standing out a bunch within pretty much every other album. Every album kind of has a character of its own, but this one is really like the pop album. So yeah. Nothing wrong with it, though. I don't want to say anything's wrong with it. I can't really complain. So, number 6, Above One More Light, is 1,000 Suns at 4 out of 5 stars. So we're bumping up a half star here already. And like I said, this is the album where I kind of, in the timeline, as I was growing up, keeping up with things, I kind of grew up with Linkin Park. This is kind of where I fell off a little bit. I do remember certain songs like Waiting for the End and stuff coming out, but yeah, I just got out of this kind of music around that time, unfortunately, because I feel like I should have kept up with them. They have so much good stuff. Anyway, 1,000 Suns, their most varied album yet during my listening experience, because I go through these albums in order as I'm doing them, or at least try to. Lots of different soundscapey segue tracks compared to the old albums. They consist of a lot of different production elements, more modern stuff. This brings a more of the dynamic between Chester and Mike's vocals on most of the songs compared to the album before this. Some of their most experimental tracks are on here. There's some heavy bangers, more ballads, interesting hip-hop fusions of different styles, and plenty of electronic tidbits. Even the turntables from the first album make a brief reappearance on here on a couple tracks. A few more guitar solos on here than on Minutes to Midnight, and they all serve a pretty good purpose on their respective songs. The vibe of the album feels epic and post-apocalyptic. Not that they didn't kind of have some of those vibes before, but this definitely ups the like cinematic kind of experience to it all, I guess. Yet at the same time, it still has those motivational and optimistic things, as much as it seems like kind of like an end of the world or post-apocalyptic theme going on with this thing. It is a very uplifting, as much as any of their lyrics can be. Their anger from the past seems to be more blatantly directed at the atmosphere of current events at the time of this album. Whereas before, I don't want to say they didn't have any like that, but it seemed like it was very personal before, whereas this one feels more political in a way. It feels like a solid mix of the OG sound with the real band sound of the previous album. And we'll get into that, what I mean by the real band sounds a little later, I guess, not to give anything away, but yeah. So, pretty good album. I didn't have a problem with it, thought it was an interesting experience. I was sad I missed it, but, the other albums, basically how this is going to go is just that the other albums have more songs. The more we go through this, they have more songs that I just cannot live without, So I'm just ranking them on my enjoyability and what I feel the production values of them and stuff are objectively and subjectively, So, anyway, moving on to number 5. We are going with Living Things at 4 out of 5 stars. They fully embrace the current modern sounds of this era that they helped influence. Really? I mean, I feel like a lot of electronic and other alternative rock and new metal, metalcore acts, emo acts really took a lot from Linkin Park's early sound. A lot of the glitchy elements of the first 2 albums are back, but with more refined production and more dubstep influence. You can tell that the electronic scene that was going on at this time was really seeping into what was going on in their studio. So, similar to the previous album in its approach to the songwriting and the song structures. It's not as many solos as either of the previous 2, but they are here, and they're very minimalistic, and the lead is just as creative and catchy as ever on any of their albums. Brad actually even gets a lead vocal song on Until It Breaks, so I feel like he really tried to shine on this album. And for the first time, having someone else take the lead vocal, besides a feature, was a pretty nice new texture. The interplay between Chester and Mike is just as good as and abundant as before, no complaints there. It does feel like the majority of the track list is Mike-led, which is cool for once. He definitely honed in a more melodic approach to his singing skills here, and while also not abandoning his rapping, I think, in fact, his raps are a lot better and stronger on this album. They just continued to evolve here. It's very in your face, and with a few more stylistic choices seeping in, like more modern influences, I feel like, with his flows. It's a pretty seamless track list on here, too, I will say. If you guys remember what I mean by that from, like, the Strokes video and stuff, it's just, like, you put it on and it's like a breeze to listen through. A very awesome listening experience. It's easy to get lost in, but I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, like, the songs are still catchy and interesting and memorable and all, but it just flows so well. Nice ebb and flow and peak and valley kind of stuff. They prove their skills are growing on here, as well as proving they haven't truly abandoned their roots. This album could bring in fans who dropped off of Minutes to Midnight for it being such a change in sound and dynamic and aesthetic. So, yeah. Again, nothing wrong. Really good, catchy songs on here. Thought it was interesting, and I was sad that I missed it. So, after Living Things... And this one's probably going to be the most controversial pick of here. Maybe y'all know it's coming. At number 4, I have their debut album, Hybrid Theory, at 4 out of 5 stars. Now hear me out here. For all you Linkin Park purists. It is a pure nostalgia album, right off the bat. I can't deny that. It just brings back all the memories as soon as you pop it in of when I was very young. The production set a lot of trends that would soon follow with many other bands at the time, and still kind of exists within the zeitgeist of modern rock sounds. Their blend of rapping and singing is very genuine sounding. Contrary to a lot of people saying it sounds dated and stuff, I think it's very genuine sounding, though. And it doesn't come across forced to me. All of the guitar tones are pretty sick on here. There's no real, like, guitar solos, but definitely some creative choices being made with the lead work on some of the tracks. Some of them are just pretty riff-based, but there is some interesting, like, tones and effects and just production choices going on. All of the heavy riffs are amazing on here. For the lack of solos at this time, a lot of these bands did make up with some amazing and catchy riffs. The blend of programmed instruments, such as the drums, don't seem as dated as I remember them kind of being when I was kind of growing out of Linkin Park a little bit, and I honestly feel they're pretty ahead of their time for what they did and tried to achieve compared to a lot of other bands that did it. A lot of the lyrics and vibes felt on the album seem to come from a deep and emotional place. I know that comes from Chester's youth a little bit, of something with his parents splitting up and just drug abuse and stuff like that over the years. Probably a lot more. It probably goes a little deeper than that. But, you know, obviously I wasn't him, and I do kind of feel where he came from on a lot of these tracks. Kind of hard to listen to most of his songs, just because, you know, after he passed away, the themes just seem to stick out more and more, like how poignant he was with what he wanted to get across to you. But it has a very angry, angsty, and cathartic feeling, with all that being said. I don't think they bring the turntable and synth chops anytime else like they are on here. They definitely have them in places later on, but like on here it's just like all that stuff completely controls the sound of the album. The production overall is superb. It can be loud at times, but it's never really overbearing and seems evenly mixed to me. very memorable songs with huge choruses throughout the entire track list. Cannot deny that. I'd be remiss to not include any of these songs in my top 10, but we'll get there. Great album, very memorable. It's a breeze to get through. Yeah, there's just albums with songs I like more, like I said. And moving on to that, at number 3, maybe possibly even more controversial, because I think this album may be a little more beloved than Hybrid Theory. But number 3 is Meteora at 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's similar to the debut in many ways, but also much more refined and more interesting in the variations in the track list and genre variations. Songs have a simplistic structure, similar to the debut. Not a whole lot of different like crazy bridges and middle eights and different things to diverge from it. The guitar tones are stylistic, with the same kind of heaviness that they have to the debut, very crunchy, like compressed, but super slamming, like great choices, whatever they did with that. I'm not really familiar with what guitar tones, they use, or the amps or anything. Even the blend of real and digital instruments is similar here, but perhaps in the mix even slightly better. It is definitely a slight evolution of songwriting, though. A little more ballads, and I put ballads in quotes, than before, because they all are still a little heavy. They're not like, 80s power ballads or even like acoustic folky ballads. It's just, they're kind of sadder songs, and they got more of a down-tempo approach, and, yeah, they just feel like ballads. They have more of those than before on here. They only had like a couple before, and each of these still gets pretty powerful, as I was saying. Also, a lot more straight-up metal moments on here, with a lot of the riffs and everything, like just things I could classify as pure heavy metal. The angst and raw emotion is still at full force, but the themes are becoming even more open and honest here. The soundscapes throughout are still incredible to me for this era, and all the extra tidbits are still so memorable and so well executed. That was a huge thing that drew me in back when I was a kid, is just all the extra noises going on here. Less of the classic turntable sound here, just a little bit of it, especially with the instrumental session. Less rapping too, though Nobody's Listening, for example, is like a straight up hip hop track, bare bones. Yeah, so Meteora definitely had a huge impact on me. I wore every song to the ground. That doesn't speak for why it's at number 3 and not higher, but it's more so just that, the first 2 albums are so similar, as everyone knows. They both had like an equal impact on my life, and yeah, it's just hard for me to argue against the fact that I feel like Linkin Park only evolved in their skills and stuff from here, and they became less of something that was just dated to the early 2000s. They proved that they were a real band, as much as people make a joke out of them and a meme, and it's very unfortunate, because I definitely got made fun of for being a fan of them as a kid. I'm sure people still do. As sad as it is with Chester's passing, that people cannot even see a little bit of, positivity in their music. But yeah, it is what it is. Different strokes, different folks, as it is. And this is just my opinion too. So feel free to have your own. I want to make this a discussion after all. But I hope somebody can see where I'm coming from on this. Anyway, this one was the hardest choice, not controversial, but the hardest choice of this list for me. Because this was my favorite album for a very long time of theirs, and upon doing this re-listen and going through this again, I have changed it. I had to do the same thing with my top 10 for this too, which is crazy. I never thought I'd have to re-rank any of Linkin Park stuff, but I in fact did. So at number 2, at 4.5 out of 5 stars, I have Minutes to Midnight. I know, anyone who knows me knows that's a shocker, right? And you guys know what's coming, so A big update in sound. Gone is the excess of electronic elements, and they added a more straightforward alternative rock approach to the mix. They sound like a real band, as I was saying before, with production tricks, with little production tricks to augment the experience. Like, there is still some synth sound beds and soundscapey things going on, and definitely some electronic beats and all that still in the mix, but there's very much less of it. Like, some tracks like don't seem like they have any of that going on at all. And yeah, the instruments just sound very much real, like they were recorded in a real room. I don't know if that's just because of Rick Rubin stepping in and changing them up like he does sometimes. Wow, but yeah, it's just like a whole new band almost on this album, really. There are synths and programmed elements still, like I was saying, but they are employed more sparingly and don't take up so much of the mix as before. For anybody who that was just a big turn-off, I think this album is for you. Not so much rapping, though definitely still the centerpiece of a few tracks on here. Not much of the dynamic shift between Chester and Mike's vocal trade-off as before either, which is strange considering it had been such a core element of their sound before this. In fact, Mike doesn't seem to have as many vocal performances compared to the first two at all. There are a couple songs with interplay between them, but it seems Chester and Mike's songs are separated. And I don't know if that's because maybe he was just maybe a little too busy with like Fort Minor or something at the time, so he felt like he had already been doing a lot of vocal stuff. I don't know what the deal was really with this. But it does make the album stand out in that sense, and I do enjoy that approach to this very much so, that their songs are kind of like separate Chester and Mike songs. They don't really go back to that much later. There's some awesome heavy metal moments on here too, like true metal moments, like Giving Up and everything like that. No More Sorrow. They just start getting more epic. The tones for the distorted guitars sound more organic and still have that same crushing effect as before on Hybrid Theory and Meteora. But yeah, they just sound like, I don't want to say they were coming from a processor before, but if they were, they definitely sound like they're coming from a real fucking powerful tube amp now. Not that each has their place, so it's not that I like really one more, like in a creative sense. So, Brad starts playing some more actual guitar solos on here. Most are pretty simplistic, minimalistic, but a couple of them stand out really well and really show off that he has some skills, like the one in What I've Done and Shadow of the Day. They're pretty catchy, like minimalistic solos, but the other ones are definitely stand out, like No More Sorrow and I think it's In Pieces. Yeah, they're just amazing. Definitely blew me away the first time I heard them, because I didn't really pay much attention to their guitar before I started playing guitar, and then started playing guitar and got more into like music history and early heavy metal music, as I said before. And when I went back and rediscovered some Linkin Park, and found that they did have guitar solos and stuff, and some of them are really good and catchy and memorable and emotional and powerful, it really drew me back into them big time. Yeah, so they all stand out really well, and all the lead work is creative throughout this whole album in general, way more than before. The bass on here is actually way more present too. I know I haven't spoken much of the bass throughout their stuff, but like a lot of it is really strong on the albums after this. It kind of can be overshadowed by the synth elements, because I'm sure there's a lot of synth bass being worked in. Whether Phoenix is playing that all himself and it's being tied in, I don't really know. But on here, because the focus seems to be on a more real band approach, the bass is definitely louder and punchier and just way heavier. I love it, especially being someone who also plays bass. Yeah, it just drove me into the sound, the mix, way more. It was there before, but definitely took a back seat as far as him having more interesting parts to add to the songs and its place in the mix. And I know he didn't really, I don't think he played on the first album. I'm pretty sure that Mike and Brad played all the bass on Hybrid Theory. But even on Meteora, the bass isn't like huge on there, I don't think. Still, some themes of angst and anger on Minutes to Midnight, but there is far more maturity in those tracks and more focus on themes of loss and sorrow and reflection and introspection on here. All of these they had before, but there's definitely more of a melancholy and sad kind of feel to this album. So yeah, that was my number one for a long time, Minutes to Midnight, man. I just love all the songs on there and the approach. It's just such a beautiful album. It's one of those albums where almost every song, except for the heavy ones, just, you know, almost can bring you the tears, especially thinking about, you know, Chester and, you know, maybe what he was feeling through that stuff. But yeah, so cool. Love that album. It was such a cool change in pace for them. I know a lot of people hated it when it came out, and some people loved it more than the old stuff. I was one of those that loved it even more, and still do. Wish they would have returned to something more like that later, but glad they still kept evolving, kept doing something different. Because obviously, we get to my number one, which is the only album left, if you've been paying attention, The Hunting Party. Also at 4.5 out of 5 stars. I know. Those of you who are like, oh, could this be one of your favorite bands, you know, and you ain't going to give any of them a perfect album. Like I said, it's going to take a lot to get a 5 out of 5. You know, for some albums for me, it's just a weird niche thing. It's got to be something that I wholly enjoy. That means like so much to me. It's like a desert island like kind of album that would be a contender for that. And all these, as much as they have a strong impact on me, it's just there's other music that kind of takes a higher place. And yeah, I mean, I am halfway rating these on production and what I enjoy out of the production on them too. And it's just that a lot of their stuff isn't my cup of tea, to be honest with you. It just isn't necessarily what I go for when I think of perfection. But I will say that I don't find really a goddamn thing wrong with most of these albums at all. Like, it's like splitting hairs, you know. It'll be like that with a lot of these bands I'm talking about at first, because some of them mean so much to me. But just because they don't have a 5-star perfect album to me doesn't mean anything negative, in my opinion. Like I said, above 2 stars, you got something that I'll easily return to for some reason or another. Anyway, Hunting Party, the heaviest and most metal-influenced album, obvious as soon as it comes on. It was obvious to me when I first listened to it, the first day it came out, back in, I think, like 2017, something like that. Everything is turned to 11. All of the previous stylistic palettes are there as far as the ever so increasingly experimental electronic sound beds, like the ones that were on 1,000 Suns and Living Things. The back and forth between Mike and Chester, the combination of the the combination of the fan-demanded, angsty early Linkin Park with the hook-driven, more real band styles of their mid-career. Even the features aren't something that they ever shied away from on here. They did those on Reanimation and a couple times before. Everything is just done to the extreme, to sonic perfection, and with way more finesse than ever before on here. The themes on here are very dark, but seem to be politically aimed and very in-your-face to stand against injustices. War, guilt, conspiracy, and crime are obvious keywords throughout pretty much every song on this album. Chester's voice is stronger than ever on here, which is crazy because he's always strong, but it seems like he just took them vocal steroids on this one. He just got super powerful. The screams sound way more controlled, and his melodic voice has more powerful and sounds tighter than ever before. The features aren't a huge part of this album. I know a lot of people who have anything bad to say about Hunting Party usually say that the features kind of take away. They were expecting more out of that. But really, the ones that are on here really do add the character of the person that it is contributing, and I think they really stand out and actually add something to the Linkin Park sound, as minimal as some of them may be, like Tom Morello's Drawbar or something. I still feel the Tom Morello-ness of that. But the Darren Malakian, the Tom Hamilton, I think that's who it is on there, and Rakim, yeah, their parts are amazing. I'd be remiss to say I didn't enjoy that element of this album. They definitely add a unique vibe to their respective tracks. Mike's rapping and singing are similar to the last couple albums from this one, but like Chester, he's adding way more power and being way more demanding in his approaches than before, I think. Though he had already kind of gotten to the level he was on this album and the last couple ones, I'll say. Every instrument has gotten way more technical on here. There's more guitar solos than any other Linkin Park album. And they all stand out. They're all so cool, and, you know, like, just totally blew my mind that Brad could play that way. Like, I just thought that he was against doing, like, crazy solos, but on here, it's like, they took the sound of them to the extreme. It all seems to have gotten better here. Everything, the bass, the drums are, like, the best drum album on this one, just super top-notch. Yeah, just everything is way more powerful. It's the apex freaking Linkin Park right here. They reached their prime on this album. It's also got a seamless track list too. I don't just like it because it's just heavy and got these solos and these crazy screams and powerful moments and, you know, Rakim's awesome verse and stuff. Yeah, I think it's also just a seamless flow of the track list, just like most of their albums that are super good. When you put it on, it just breezes by, and, you know, you kind of get lost in it. Lost in the sauce. So yeah, Hunting Party, number 1. Definitely had a huge impact on me, brought me right back into the Linkin Park, you know, fandom. And yeah, this was a hard list to rank, hard to get through, very emotional listen most of the time, but also very on the edge of my seat and the head banging and air drumming and shit all the time. Fucking hard not to sing along to a lot of these. So yeah, it's just, you know, a band that I dropped out of, similar to like the Strokes, as I was saying, like midway through their career after I just got into different music. And yeah, I'm sad to say that I did, because I missed a lot of good stuff. And there's some really good songs on all of these albums. Even one more light. I'll get into that with the next video with my top 10 songs. But yeah, plenty of honorable mentions on every album. So, hope you enjoyed my ranking of the Linkin Park discography, their studio album discography anyway. They definitely have other stuff. Please check that stuff out too. Please listen to any of the bands that I review on here, talk about. I mean, obviously, I think some of them are, you know, maybe mainstream enough that, you know, they probably don't have to worry about getting more listeners. But I want to express my love for these bands, and I encourage people to listen to good music just because it's good music, not just because it's popular. So, yeah, that's why I'm going back and listening to all these again, so I can reevaluate my own opinions and assessments of it based on my current musical standings. So, yes, you all have a great day. Thanks for sticking around through the whole video. I hope you check out my top 10 Linkin Park songs in the next video. Hopefully I don't have any more troubles getting these uploaded. I appreciate your patience with me, those of you who stick around and want to listen to my voice talking about these bands and these artists and these albums and these songs. So, yes, please like and subscribe, ring the bell. I'll see you in the next one. Peace and love.